Good evening. Welcome to WFUZ-TV, the People's Voice podcast. I'm Blair Castro, here with Thomas Jenkins, and we have Dr. Dale Deas in the studio with us today, who's running for United States Senate, here to represent our state of Alabama. Dr. Deas, thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So we'll ask right away, what motivated you to get in this race? Tell us a little bit about your background and yourself and what distinguishes you from the other candidates.
Yes, so my name's Dr. Dale Deas. I'm from Mobile, born and raised 19 years. After that, I did biomedical engineering at Vanderbilt. And then I went to UAB for medical school. And then I went to Emory for heart surgery training. It was an integrated program. There's like 35 spots in the country. There was one position at Emory. And I got it. And so I trained there for 7 years. At the end of my training, the last 9 weeks, I had two malpractice cases that I was asked to take part in and have a deposition. And after that, after I provided the truth, in my employer, Emory Hospital, knowing that I was going to be providing the truth, they terminated me. And it's if you look back on the last year to year and a half in that period of time where I was employed, you could tell when they shifted and understood that I was going to take part in these two cases. And I think that it's God driven, my path to running for U.S. Senate, because I was at the largest training program in the United States. There's 25 trainees in two cases, and I was randomly placed in these two cases. So if you look at statistics, it's crazy that I was in both of them. And so, I'm a person that upholds integrity, and I provide the truth. And because I went to my state politicians, Katie Britt, Tommy Tuberville, Gary Palmer, and I asked them for help, which they said that they would provide help in the beginning. And I was like, okay, well, these people sound like great people. They're going to help me. And then all three of them turned their back at different points in time. And if you track the money with Emory Hospital and the donations and their political umbrella that's been created, their money was going into these politicians' pockets. And I found that they were bought and paid for. And so that's been a big part of my campaign. I decided to run for U.S. Senate so that I can actually provide a service to Alabama and its citizens that I was not provided myself.
So this is a topic that tends to, go over a lot of people's heads. It's hard for people to wrap their mind around how much money controls everything and where donations are coming from. So kind of piecemeal it a little, talk a little bit about speaking the truth and being retaliated against in some way. I feel like that has happened to members of the media as well, ourselves included. Sometimes we'll say things that are completely true based on public records, and you get told, you can't come to this event anymore. You can't do this. We don't want you here. Like, it's not as bad as losing your job, but it is a prominent thing in the political world. So can you talk a little bit more about, I see your posts online, you speak out a lot about stuff. How has that been in terms of like retaliation, especially the polls? Like, they don't even put you in the polls. Mm-hmm. What's going on with that?
Yes. So that's a great question. When I announced that I was running for U.S. Senate on January 14th, I don't think the people, they didn't know. No one knew that I was going to be running. I'm sure it was a surprise to them. It took about 24 hours when I was asked by AL.com. Her name's Severn, or anyways, it's Serven. And then another guy from 1819 News, Caleb Taylor. I was called on the phone by Caleb Taylor, spoke to him for 30 minutes. And he said that he'll have a press release out announcing that I'm running within 12 to 24 hours, and then he ghosted me. And same thing for the lady that worked for AL.com. She's head of politics. She's even writing articles yesterday about people, but she also ghosted me over the weekend. And I've learned that these media outlets that are the dominant ones in the state, there are backers and people that help fund them. For instance, 1819 News, they come from Alabama Policy Institute and Bob Raleigh. who was our previous governor back 20 years ago, has dumped a bunch of money into API, and then API formed 1819 News. 1819 News is not going to cover me because I'm a whistleblower. And, Bob Raleigh, there's a lot of history behind him. I didn't even know this until I went digging, but there's a documentary called Atticus and the Architect that talked about the Don Siegelman story. Because Don Siegelman, and this happened in Baldwin County, but Don Siegelman was winning the election the night prior. So on the night of the election, he was winning by 6,000 votes. And then that morning, 6,000 votes were transferred and taken away from him, and they announced that Bob Raleigh won. And Bob Raleigh was basically bought and paid for by the Philadelphia Indian Reservation in Mississippi, and then also by the Creek Indians. But this has been happening for a long time, and that's why I personally believe 1819 News has been involved in not covering me. Also, Yellowhammer News. Paul Shashi is the owner of Yellowhammer News. He's my age. He was part of the machine at Alabama. Which Katie Britt was too. And Paul Shashi was the chief of staff for Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville. He still owns Yellowhammer News right now. And so any Yellowhammer News article that comes out that talks about both Britt or Tuberville, you can't even really trust it because their chief of staff is the one that owns Yellowhammer News. And for 1819, that's the same thing. Each one of these news organizations, even AL.com, they all have their financial backers. And so you can't trust the news media. You can't trust the polls. For instance, there was a poll last weekend, the straw poll in Gardendale, Alabama, which is Hudson's hometown. And there were ballots that were already casted and thrown in the box prior to the doors even opening. And then there were family members of candidates that were filling out votes, dozens of them. And this was witnessed by multiple people and were put in into the box. So there's this false narrative that's being created that Jared Hudson is coming out as this dark horse grassroots candidate when he's not. And anyways, I could talk a lot about this stuff, but
Yeah.
That's fine. Don't feel bad. We had 1819 wrote a shit piece about the forum we were telling you about before we started taping, and they tried to frame it like a bunch of people didn't show up and were kind of poking fun at us, even on the radio.
really.
Mm-hmm.
And then she put, she has me blocked now. Erica Thomas was the writer. She put a picture of like nobody in the audience, but they were all like behind her at the time, like the angled picture. It was really weird. I was like, what? And I was really like kind of upset because I followed them and I liked them. I started reading about it and I was like, oh, okay, I ain't that upset. And Yellowhammer, is obviously pushing Hudson a lot, I think. And it is strange to me how I just don't see the Hudson, there's a lot of red flags in that campaign, especially when it comes to finances, especially when it comes to him. And I feel bad saying that out loud. Sometimes people give me a hard time. They're like, oh, he's just amazing. He's just this like great, fighter. And I wanted to believe that, but out of everybody in your race that I've reached out to, he's never ever wrote me a single reply back. Everybody else has. Well, except for Steve Marshall and him. But Steve Marshall, that makes more sense. But like, the people I know that know him were so about it. For him to just totally not want to say anything at all, it was kind of off-putting and strange to me.
Yeah. The thing about Jared Hudson and Yellowhammer News, which is a big deal, the Secretary of State website, when we announce our campaigns, we have to register with the Secretary of State. It becomes a legal document, the certificate of formation. And the certificate of formation was signed by a guy named Jared, I don't even know how to pronounce his first name, Sinclair, Jerrod. That's Allison Sinclair's husband. Allison Sinclair, who used to work for 1819 News, according to FEC documents that she signed, now works for Right Side Media, which she owns. And Right Side Media formally merged with Yellowhammer in February. So, when you have articles written about Jared Hudson with Yellowhammer News, well, one of their big execs within that company is the person's wife who signed the document for him to run for U.S. Senate. So it's just ridiculous. But pretty much all major news outlets in Alabama are bought, and it all goes back to Alabama Power.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you mentioned that you weren't taking anything except like small donations? So you're not taking PAC. I assume you're not taking APAC money, but seems to be a hot topic this debate. How are your finances, I guess, a little more distinguished? And going back to Alabama Power as well. So that's like where I first started seeing your post, was in that Alabama Power group. And we had a candidate tell us that Alabama Power was actually giving money to, I think, Yellowhammer, some of those media outlets as well. Do you know anything about that?
Yes. So there's something called Lion Pack. There were over $1 million in this Lion Pack. Over 97% of it came from Alabama Power, and the Lion Pack was formed and is associated with Yellowhammer News. And Alabama Power wants to control the narrative of their monopoly that they own in the state, the south 2/3 of the state. And so Yellowhammer News has been one of their media wings that has created this false narrative of what's going on with Alabama Power, because that's how they've gotten these bills that no one really wanted passed, and then they somehow miraculously got back passed, like Senate Bill 360. And it's Alabama Power's been running this state for a long time, and it's been using consultants such as Paul Shashi, who owns Yellowhammer News. He's been working with his own company called Cardinal Consulting Group, which used to be called SR Communications, and a guy named Sean Ross, who is the current chief of staff of Katie Britt, is the one who also co-owned and worked at SR Communications with Paul Shashi. And then also there's the Matrix, which is associated with Paul Shashi and other people like Joe Perkins, who's been part of the Matrix since 1999. So it's tremendously an undercover operation, and basically the bagmen of the state. And there was a second question you mentioned besides Alabama Power. Just was it the donations or?
Yes, you mentioned that you weren't taking like PAC or APAC donations and
Correct.
small money like that. So in terms of funding, like how do you think that affects your race? And I guess I think it affects you in a good way. It makes you like more credible and less beholden to people. But how does that affect you in terms of viability and people seeing you as like a legitimate selection?
Correct. So this whole viability or legitimate selection thing is just it's created as a term to buy the establishment. So just because someone doesn't have $1 million because they accepted it from they didn't accept it from a PAC doesn't mean that they're not viable. It means that they have morals. And for me, I went to my politicians who were supposed to work for me, not for Alabama Power, not for Emory University. And instead, they were bought and paid for, and they turned their back on me. I want to prove a point that I'm not going to be accepting any large dollar donations, no special interest money, so that I can truly work for the people of Alabama, because that's not what was provided to me. And so, for instance, APAC, they have paid money and given money to all 7 congressmen and women in the state of Alabama, and both U.S. senators. That's all 9 federal people that are elected have all accepted money from APAC. And then APAC linked money has also been accepted by Jared Hudson. And, Blue Cross Blue Shield has been accepted by Barry Moore and Steve Marshall. Alabama Power has been accepted by all 3, Steve Marshall, Hudson, and Barry Moore. All this money that's being given are called favors, and favors are returned by votes and bills in Montgomery and in Washington D.C. And so they're not gonna represent you. And so, for instance, there's a debate that's happening this coming Monday with the Azalea City Republican women. And at first I was not invited, and Seth Burton was not invited because we didn't have a $500,000 raised, and we were considered non-viable candidates. And the president of that organization even tried to turn it around on me and ask me, do I think my campaign's viable? And I told her that, when you set that established value amount, you're telling people that, that you're not, that basically you have to accept money from these big organizations and the establishment to be considered viable. And it just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's a crazy world, and I think that the culture needs to change. And if you were to stack who has the most money and who has the least amount of money, Rodney Walker, he has his own funds because he's done a great job as a CEO of his own company. But other people, this is money that they didn't earn. They got it from people that have favors that they want in return. And people need to start looking at the candidates that have the least amount of money, because those are the most viable, in my opinion, to serve you. So yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at these polls, and I've never been a poll person. I've worked in politics a long time, and I've very rarely see one that actually like comes to fruition a lot of the time, especially so early on. And was disheartened to see Rodney Walker, you and Seth Burton like never really in the polls, and it just didn't make sense to me because I feel like in terms of who actually goes to debates and whose content I see online. And maybe I'm not a good gauge because I'm not like a boomer sitting at home getting a mailer and like looking at it. But I just feel like you guys, I remember you from events and listen to you, and I, don't ever really see Steve Marshall or anybody, biased to Barry because he is our congressman and he has always been responsive to me. So of course I know him, but I just didn't get the Jared Hudson and the Steve Marshall thing. Do you think that times are changing to the point where the traditional way of winning a campaign with bombarding people with mailers and, commercials on Fox News, that's like not as effective anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, people are turned off by, in my opinion, the majority of people in the state of Alabama are turned off by what's been happening with Israel's control over the United States and its politicians with AIPAC. I think people are upset with President Trump in a way because he promised no new foreign wars. And I voted for him with the promise of no new foreign wars. And the clarity of why that war occurred is still unclear. I personally think that there's this ceasefire, and it will probably persist until after the primary because Trump has his own selected candidates that he wants to win. These commercials, all these billboards and stuff, like for instance, I'm sure Barry Moore's a good guy, but running a commercial that he's Trump endorsed and he's strong on the border has nothing to do with what he's going to do for the next 6 years as a U.S. senator. And so I think people are starting to understand that being bought and paid for and having all this money dumped into the market is actually not representing them. And people are waking up in Alabama because, we're bottom in education, we're bottom in healthcare, we're, bottom in transparency. And we have, the political corruption in Alabama is one of the highest in the country. And I think people are starting to realize that, all their bills are going up and they're not able to, have a family, or they're not able to even own their own home. And our, housing market is the worst it's been in over 100 years. And, they're fed up with the politicians that are currently in office. And so, really, people that aren't bought and paid for and have, the hearts of the citizens in mind are the ones that are actually going to do something. So.
What do you have in mind if you should take office? What would be the climate if you had to work with the Trump administration, given all that?
Well, I like to call myself a Reagan conservative with Tea Party values. I know a lot of people like the Tea Party movement, within the last 10 to 15 years ago. And then came MAGA movement. I think a lot of the strongest MAGA supporters, when you look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Sean Ryan, all these people who have become very big fans of Trump's at one point, they were also disheartened by the MAGA movement. And I think that the MAGA movement is having a shift in perception over this past year. I'll certainly, work with the Trump administration, for the first 2 years in office. And, I am a Republican and I'm loyal to Republicans, but I also will look at all bills and all discussions, whether you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, and have an educated conversation. Because, certainly all people have good ideas, and we need to just come across the aisle and understand that, to get things done, we have to, sometimes meet in the middle. And I think shutting down the government and having these filibusters and having people change their minds on whether they support or don't support the SAVE Act, and having all this propaganda that comes out, I think people are tired of it. And, we need to have people that are actually, good at compromising, good at negotiations, good at making deals. Because right now, all it seems like is that these politicians are propped up by all these big donors and all these lobbyists. And I personally don't even want to deal with a single lobbyist in the 6 years that I'm there in office. I want to deal with the people and focus on employment rights and focus on health care and focus on all these things that will help people save money. I'm not worried about a lobbyist from a healthcare company coming to my door. They might as well not even show up because, my policies are going to help everybody, and it's a trickle down effect. And it's just nonsense because it's like these sleazy, farm people that, pharmacology, pill people that are selling these drugs, and then they, it's kind of like, the oxycodone pandemic over the last 10 to 15 years with the Purdue pharma family that really hurt us. And I'm been turned off by the lobbyists and this whole industry, and I just want to completely flip the table. Alabama Power, for instance, a lot of people say, well, you can't fix Alabama Power. You're running for U.S. Senate. Well, yes, you can, because our legislatures at the state level have failed us. They passed Senate Bill 360, which provides 5 new PSCs and then a Secretary of Energy, which all of that's a joke. That basically makes it where there's never going to be a majority to have a transparent meeting with the PSC. And no one wanted that bill, but they somehow got it passed because Alabama Power has bought and paid majority of the legislature in Montgomery. And, it's time to fix that. And so with the PSC taking donations from Alabama Power and with the state legislatures taking donations from Alabama Power, the only other person that can fix it is the U.S. Senator. And the U.S. Senator can fix it through giving subpoenas to the Alabama Power and the people involved and enforcing transparency. You can use the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Energy Regulatory Committee, FERC, and then also the Department of Justice. All 3 of those can be used to force transparency. And my plan is to cap the return on equity, which means that there is a percent that Alabama Power is given. And because they are the monopoly of the state, it's called a sweetheart deal. And they got $2 billion worth of our money between 2012 and 2022. And they used that to buy a political, protection ring of corruption that has allowed them to continue to persist and do what they're doing. So, our money is being used to actually come against us. And if we cap that return on equity with the rate formula to 9%, which is the national average, that will save us a lot on our bills, and then also ensure that there's a transparent PSC meeting yearly. Those are 2 things that a U.S. Senator can absolutely ensure. So, I'm tired of seeing the comments of people saying that a U.S. Senator, can't deal with that. Those are people that are voting for Jared Hudson. So, and also, like with healthcare, there was a bill that was passed on the last day of legislation on April the 9th, with Kay Ivey signing it. And, she signed a bill that allows Huntsville Health and the Crestwood merger. It allows these monopolies to persist, and it actually is against rural hospitals because it created these criteria for rural hospitals that are impossible to meet. And it only does a disservice to the rural hospitals, and it protects the monopolies. And so, thing is, though, is that Kay Ivey has accepted money and has money from the healthcare system, including Huntsville Health. So, we have too many bought and paid for politicians, people that are too old and people that, mentally aren't all there. And it's time to get younger people in office.
I 100% agree with that. Circling back to healthcare, how do you feel that RFK is doing with the MAHA movement? And also, like an addendum to what you just said, that the purple-haired lady, Deloro or something, have you seen her arguing with him about raw milk and stuff?
Yeah, I know.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm obviously with the MAHA movement as a doctor. Nutrition, what he's enforcing with nutrition for all medical schools is an excellent idea. Doctors, to be honest, have no idea about nutrition. ask a trick question to a doctor and ask them, these nutritional questions, they're not going to be able to answer them because we didn't get an education in nutrition. So I believe, and the thing is that we are respected in the community as the people that are supposed to have the answers, and nutrition is the foundation for health. And that's something that we treat after the fact with pills. And that's one of the reasons why I became a surgeon, is because I wanted an immediate fix for the human body. And that's why I joined, the role as a heart surgeon. But the MAHA movement and what RFK Jr. is doing with nutrition, I 100% agree in. There's some other things. I know that the vaccine movement, there are vaccine injuries. They do exist. Do I think that, the COVID vaccine should be enforced on everybody in the country? No. I think, as a Tea Party believer, I think that, the people should have the right to choose what's put in their body. But there's just a lot of turmoil that's happening, with that stuff. And it's certainly interesting. Yeah.
For sure.
I was going to ask about that, your, perspectives on health freedom, especially as a surgeon, like how that was. You mentioned employment rights. Like, did you have any struggles with that, or did you witness things that you were like, oh, that's kind of weird, that person lost their job over like not doing a mandate or something?
Yes. There were a lot of nurses that lost their jobs from refusing to take the jab, as what people colloquially call it. But that certainly happened, and they certainly were not protected, in my opinion. I'll say that in my unemployment matters, there's something called regulatory capture, and this is why monopolies are not a good thing for our country. It's because monopolies, when they become too big, it's kind of like this idea of too big to fail with the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. Mm-hmm. These hospitals have become so large that, society becomes dependent on them. And then it's the same thing as Pam Bondi said about the Epstein files. This is just kind of a corollary, but, she said, well, if we go after all of the people that were involved in that are named in the Epstein files, that civilization as we know it, won't function or exist, which, people that rape children should be placed in jail, or, I believe in the death penalty, just like Nancy Mace talks about. The death penalty for people that rape children. I believe in that. And so I also believe in the full unredacted release of all Epstein files. If you're willing to rape children, you're willing to face the American public, in my opinion. And, obviously, Barry Moore did not support, the full unredacted release of the Epstein files, and did not support the release of Congress men and women that have participated in those acts with rape in general. And, that's because these people are bought and paid for, and they're all protecting each other. It's a buddy-buddy system, a good old boys club that needs to end. Also with, to go back to the employment issues with regulatory capture, because these monopolies have become so large, federal entities don't exist like they should exist. So EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, you can give them a rock solid case. And for instance, Emory helps interface and train people within the EEOC at their own campus. And how are they going to be unbiased because of that? And so Tommy Tuberville is on the Help Committee, the Senate Help Committee, which deals with HHS, it deals with EEOC, it deals with all these agencies that help employees. And Katie Britt is the one that is on the Appropriations Committee that's head of appropriating money for the next fiscal year with HHS, EEOC, and all these people. So I have two people that are bought and paid for. One funds them, and the other one, regulates them. And they both are being paid to hide what happened to me. And so EEOC told me that I agreed to mediation with Emory when I do not want to mediate with Emory because of what they've done. It's so egregious in the evidence I have. I want to have a full member trial, jury trial against Emory, and it will happen. EEOC called me again out of the blue a couple of months ago, and they said, well, your mediation is in October of 2026. And all this stuff happened at the beginning of 2024. And this is, 2-3 years of my life, where they've been, committing these, both state level and federal, both civil and criminal acts, that all link to, bond fraud. And that's a whole different subject, that I can get into. But, essentially the municipal bonds that Emory buys, and sells, to build the hospitals and the buildings and to buy all these things, they come with, agreeing on a certain level of criteria, whether you have conflicts of interest on their boards, that they follow the law, that they have a whistleblower policy, and they certainly didn't follow the whistleblower policy, and that's a criteria to maintain tax exempt status with the IRS in your Form 990, and they don't. And I've turned all that in, and it's just everybody's protecting everybody, and it's a good old boy system, and it needs to go. And so, I'm not going to, attack it. I'm going to decapitate it. So, because that's what we need at this point.
Being a whistleblower really takes a lot of courage, and even we're not even whistleblowers, we're just people that talk about things in public records and point out things that I believe are kind of obvious or that people might not want to dig into and make it a little more noticeable. And still, even just doing that, I feel like you get targeted, you get blacklisted, you get this it's funny too, because the people you're pointing out things about like to play the victim, I feel, and they try to twist it and gaslight the public into thinking that you're just a crazy lunatic person who's out here like behaving erratically, but really it feels like all the facts and data are lining up with what you say. Do you ever have that experience where people like try to shift the narrative, I guess, and make it seem like they're victimized by you?
Yes. So, actually, and this is something I wanted to bring up because I've seen some comments on Facebook about it, and so I'll just clear it up on the record here. For instance, like Jared Hudson has called me a fake doctor. I graduated medical school and have an MD with a diploma in 2018 from University of Alabama, Birmingham. So I'm not a fake doctor. And this is something that I'm directing directly to Jared Hudson that I want everyone to think about when they go to vote on May 19th. Jared Hudson, if you had one of your family members in the operating room put to sleep and something happened to them and they died, would you want me to take up for you and your family, or would you want me to side with that hospital? That's what I did. I took up for one of your family members and I was terminated for it. So calling me a fake doctor, that's ridiculous. I respect you for a Navy SEAL and what you've done for our country. So to call me a fake doctor is completely inappropriate, and that's on the record. I have a screenshot of it. You basically are trying to portray me as a bad person when all I did was protect the people in Georgia. And, what you're saying is that we shouldn't have people that protect, patients, and we should just protect the good old boys club. And that's why you accept money from PACs. You have these super PACs, the American Conservatives super PAC with $500,000. The person that's fake is you, Jared Hudson. You're the fake guy. The thing is that your people that protect you and say these nice things about you, they haven't even studied you, and that's why I produced the information that is concrete, that has serial codes, barcodes, whatever code you want. I have it, and please, everyone, ask for it because I'll produce it. He is the establishment's candidate. He is connected to Yellowhammer News, which is Paul Shashi, which is the chief of staff for both Tommy Tuberville and Katie Britt. And he is the third person in line. He's the horse that's been picked that wants to win the Kentucky Derby, and he's not. Because I'm going to make sure that this fraud is exposed. So, it's disrespectful to call me a fake doctor. That's like me calling you a fake patriot. That's not true. I know you're a patriot. So, it's just ridiculous.
What's his argument that you're a fake doctor? Like, is it just the verbiage, or does he have like his degrees from the School of Hard Knocks? Like, what's his like?
He just says fake doctor, and then also there's a guy who. This is something very important to clear up because some nurse practitioners from UAB have written that I'm suing a nurse from UAB for asking me a question. That's not true. What this person did, the name is Nolan Lyda, Lyda. He is a CRNA at UAB Hospital, and with his CRNA UAB Hospital credentials that were placed on Facebook while he was commenting as an employee of UAB Hospital, he kept on writing about, is Dr. Dale Deas accepting new patients in the state of Alabama. I personally know Nolan Lyda. My family knows the guy. My father-in-law, who passed away last year, coached him in football at Oak Mountain High School. It's just a joke. He knows exactly what's going on. He has access to my Facebook, access to my website, and his wife, I mentored in medical school and helped her. I liked both of them. And for Nolan Lyda to come out of the blue and on Alabama Power corruption and ask the 90,000 members, is Dr. Dale Deas still accepting patients? He also does not believe in whistleblowers and does not believe in protecting patients. And if I were any patient and I saw the name Nolan Lyda in the OR at UAB or any hospital, I would not want that man to touch me, because he is coming after me being a whistleblower protecting patients. And I am a heart surgeon. Let's clear that up, because I completed all of my requirements to graduate and to be a heart surgeon. And I'm not going to let Emory Hospital, that we're looking after their pocketbooks and not their patients, to tell me whether I'm a heart surgeon or not. I have met all requirements to be a heart surgeon. I have done 7 years of training to be a heart surgeon. I am a heart surgeon. When I say I'm a heart surgeon, that does not mean I'm board certified. That does not mean I have a license to practice heart surgery. What it does mean is that I've done all the requirements to be a heart surgeon, and I was wrongfully terminated for protecting patients. And, I'm not going to let this system to continue to beat me up and try to disparage my name and destroy my life because of a financial decision that destroyed many people's lives, including good surgeons that were forced to say lies about me. So, shame on Nolan Lyda, shame on his wife, who has been liking comments on Facebook after even I told both of them that they had plenty of things to read about me and that they know exactly what's happening. They're trying to turn it on me because I exposed Nolan Lyda for producing falsehoods about me, and I'm just sick of it. It's this protecting the bully system that has to go.
Good for you for standing up for yourself. I mean, most people get scared and just cower away, and we're kind of in that same boat right now. People think that they can bully you or, stand up and, I don't know, intimidate you in some way, but we as people don't need to be doing that. We need to be standing up for ourselves, because if we don't stand up for ourselves, like, how do we stand up for others? And especially if you're running for office, like, if you can't stand up for yourself, answer transparently, and advocate for the things you've done and things you believe in, and do so honestly, then I don't think you need to be advocating for a district or a Senate seat or anything else.
Exactly. And the thing is that, what's important for a U.S. Senator is to know, what all these agencies do. How do you interact with HHS? What does HHS do? For 2 years, I've been, interfacing with HHS, the FBI, the Congress, both sides, the Senate and the House. U.S. senators are people that investigate, ask questions, and make sure the laws that are as written are done appropriately and upheld by doing Senate investigations. Because that's when you form a committee and you investigate what's going on and you expose it, and then you find ways to produce a law that helps protect the people that were done wrong. And right now, we just have a system that's only protecting the senators ourselves and the establishment. And there's a two-tier justice system that we need to completely uproot and remove from the current climate right now. And, there's just a lot to be done. And, you're exactly right. If I don't take up for myself, how can I take up for you? And I think a lot of people, the majority of people, have seen that and respect that. I'm not coming up with fake laws. I'm not coming up with some, half truth is what they call it, or some, made up thing. I'm producing facts. I'm producing laws, and the people that I show it to and send it to are just upset that I'm smarter than them and that I produce things that are actually right. And they're used to being the bullies, and they're used to not, having a backlash. But I'm not that guy. So, it's really, there's a rude awakening for Alabama coming for those that think that they can get away with corruption if I'm elected U.S. Senator.
Do you have anything else you would like people to know in closing about your priorities, your platform, why they should overall vote for you over the other candidates?
Yes. So there's some good candidates in this race. Specifically, I am the only doctor in this race. There's no doctor on the Democratic side, but I'm the only doctor in this race for U.S. Senate. Healthcare is a major issue. I think if you were to poll Alabamians, they would say that their pocketbook and their health insurance and healthcare costs and rural hospital closings would be their top two choices that they're concerned about. And I've time and time again have come up with very detailed plans on how to address corruption, how to make your pocketbook have more money in it. These are things that should incite happiness with every voter in the state of Alabama. Personally, because Hudson, Barrymore, and Marshall have been bought and paid for. If you were to ask them any question to produce a solid plan in any debate or any meeting that we go to and we speak at, they're not going to say anything. They're not going to produce anything. Steve Marshall's going to talk about gender blockers. That's all he talks about. Politicians that have, nothing to say and are bought and paid for, they just come up with these social issues that incites anger with the crowd and with Republicans. And he's a con artist. It's coming up with the right plan, a specific plan, and then telling it to the public. I have done that time and time again. I know I write a lot, but I have to say a lot, and these things take time and detail, and that's the type of senator you would want. With healthcare, I have a unique knowledge of fighting corruption. I have a unique knowledge of practicing medicine and this rural healthcare issue. I believe in what's called an all-payer system, and I want to have that for Alabama, and I would have the power to do that. In an all-payer system, if you're in a rural hospital or if you're at UAB, the echo you get or the procedure you get, the hospital gets reimbursed with the same price. And right now it's 3-to-1. So if you go to a rural hospital in Coleman, Alabama, that hospital will get, for instance, $4,000, and UAB will get paid $12,000. And what that does is it creates instability in the market for healthcare bills, because one hospital is going to bill more than the other, and then also creates the inability of rural hospitals to keep their ERs open because they're not getting reimbursed the same, and so they're hurting. And the thing is that because Blue Cross Blue Shield is a monopoly in the state, who's given money to both Barrymore and Steve Marshall, I mean, what are they going to do about this? The rural hospitals are still going to close under Steve Marshall and Barrymore. And Jared Hudson, you ask him healthcare, he can't say anything, because I've talked to him about it, and it's just it's ridiculous. There's so much to do for our state, and it's important for me to be transparent and to say that I haven't accepted any PAC money, no large dollar donations. I owe nothing to anyone, and I'm not scared of anyone, which means that I can address corruption at the state. The state of Alabama. The only person I'm scared of is God himself. And, I'm a Christian, and I don't talk about it all the time, because I have so much to say. But faith is very important to me. The Second Amendment is important to me. I think, that, for instance, people should have, maximal gun rights, because right now our government can't even protect us. So we have to protect ourselves. I can go on, but, I would love y'all's vote on May 19th. I truly will change the system. We need something different. And right now what we're getting is the same thing. If you want, another horse that looks like, Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville, vote Jared Hudson. But you're going to be sadly disappointed. And people say, well, he's in third place, all this stuff. No, he's the establishment candidate. I've uncovered it. Read my stuff. He is the one that's going to greatly disappoint you. Marshall and Barrymore, they are just going to be the yes men, and all three of them are going to disappoint you. So, I really would like for y'all to consider me as y'all's next U.S. Senator. I turned 35 on May the 4th next week. I'm young, and there's been a lot of great senators that have started out in their 30s, and they're have done very good for the United States. So, I really appreciate y'all and thank y'all for y'all's time. So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.